So trust is clearly not a binary thing. It's not an all or nothing. So when we talk about things like trust, when we're talking about trust anchors, and really one of the concomitant ideas involved with that is how do I know how to trust this distant end? So for example, the example I just gave where the thermostat is actually getting some signal from the outside and it wants to know, can it trust that information? That's one kind of trust. But let's say it wants to send a reply back that says, all right, now I have validated, let's say it does have all this certificate stuff in there and it's validated that it really is from Power Company Inc. and it's a valid message and it's been unaltered and it really says what I think it says, and so I'm going to act on that. And further, I've got to deal with Power Company Inc. that says if I have one of these smart thermostats and I get one of these critical peak pricing signals, for example, from the other end that's saying we really need to shed load now if possible, maybe I've got to deal with the power company that says I get a discount on my bill if I do that, maybe $50 for over the course of the year if I'm involved in this program. Yeah?
We had how did Texas do in their last episode with the weather? Wasn't part of the issue that a lot of the people that had signed up for the demand response shut it off during the...
Well, here's an interesting personal story on that. I can't comment for Texas, but I can comment about my house. So here's what happened at my house, is that naturally, I had a conversation with at least one person around here that whenever, because I'm the tech support at my house. That's shocking, I know, right? But when I leave, that's when those sneaky little devices decide they're going to malfunction. And it always happens. So not too terribly long ago, I was out of the country, and my wife calls and says the heat pump does not seem to be keeping up because it was cold. It was about a month ago. And I said, well, give it a little while. It's probably fine. Check to see if it's iced up. No, okay, well, I don't know. Call me in a couple hours if it still doesn't work, Well, so I got a call in a couple hours. She said, well, it's now 52 in here. I said, okay, I think we agree with your analysis. Yes, there is something wrong. So we negotiated, and my dear wife, she hates to deal with this stuff, but she arranged to, she not only picked the heat pump, she talked to the contractor, she had to schedule getting them out there, time she was in, all without waiting so long that the pipes froze. Got all that stuff in, and one of the things that we actually have on the side of our house is for $50 a year, so that was an arbitrary figure, a system that they installed on the side of our house, which is exactly that, it's a demand response thing. So when they decide that they need to shed a little load, they can send a signal to my box that's installed near the heat pump, and then it talks to the heat pump and says, hold off for a while. So that's all great, and obviously when it's really cold out, that would be a time that might conceivably be activated, right? Well, I got home after all of this had happened, and I got home and I thought, well, I'd go introduce myself to the new heat pump, and I went outside and the wires, it's got a clear thing on the side there that says, do not disconnect without calling the power company. Well, this is maybe slightly overlooked by the contractors who actually put the thing in. Yeah. And so I called them and I said, well, I've got these wires here, it's kind of a cheat, right? I'm getting this discount on my bill, but it's not actually hooked up. Can you guys send out an electrician, hook it back up? Sure, no problem. When can you be in next week? Of course, I was flying out of country again, blah, blah. Anyway, to make a long story even longer, the result is that was one of those demand signals that would not have gotten through because it was literally not connected to anything. And even after the power company came out and looked at it, they said, oh, well, the box and the heat pump are not compatible. It doesn't have the right contactor on it. So the last I saw, and again, I'm flying around too much, so the last I saw, the box is gone now from the side of my wall. So what does that mean? I don't know. I haven't contacted the company again. They haven't contacted me. I'm figuring they're probably going to buy a new one. I'm not sure. So is there a lesson in all of that long, boring tale? Probably. And that lesson would probably be that if the device isn't even there, it's certainly not going to be responding, right? And the trust that they might have had in the entire system breaks down entirely when it hits the thin air that used to be the box on the side of my house. So
The story I thought you were going to say was that you spent $10,000 for a new heat pump and they just turned it off.
no, well, that would be good too, actually. But no, they're not. As it turns out, they're not that evil. And fortunately, I didn't have to spend quite that much either. That was a relief. But this trust being a binary value is a misnomer. So in the case that the thermostat wanted to send back to the utility saying, by the way, I've complied with your desire. I've actually turned my thermostat up or down depending on the time of year. So I'm using less power, and so I want to make sure that the utility company knows that I've done that, so I get my little good boy credits. And that unlike this apparently open loop system, they actually have some notification that happens. So, okay, now the thermostat is verified. It's trusted the message that it's gotten as authentic and correct and unaltered and from the proper authority. Now it needs to send a signal back up to the other way. And so let's say, just for the sake of argument, that it has the same kind of system, so it validates the entire message and everything. And then the next thing it says is, okay, now I need to send this. So who do I send it to? And 5 boxes in the neighborhood light up and say, I'm open for business. You can route it through me. So, okay. Really? Are some of those on my home area network that I've provisioned or not? Are some of them rogue devices that this hacker kid next door, not the one who does brain surgery, he's on the other side, but the other kid on the other side, is he spoofing this? Is it a device that's not malicious but simply misconfigured? That's actually next door, but the next door's house is disconnected. And if I send it through his box, is he going to get the credit instead of me and my account? So trust is more than just, do I trust the next device or not? Or even more than, do I trust the distant end or not? It may be a combination of both of those. And there could be more. So the lesson learned, if any, in that whole part of things is that you don't necessarily want to, even if you have, in the same way that encryption is not security, neither are certificates the whole answer for trust and how it's managed in your whole system. So I'm afraid that what I have probably given you is a whole lot more of questions to ask or how not to think rather than what not to do. But that's deliberate because I think what these last couple of bullets say, learn from those who blaze the trail. I can tell you about some of the mistakes I personally have made, which may or may not be edifying because maybe you guys are smarter than I am. And then the last bit is dynamic security environment. Things change. Things change. So if we know how to think about all this, obviously that's going to be a whole lot more successful in the long term than if I just give you bullet by bullet things that you should check. And I think that I'm getting the sense of the room here that you guys, first, are quite done hearing me talk, and that you probably know a lot of this already. So I'm going to, at this point, open it up and see if there are any questions.
So I guess you brought up the trust thing. And so there's a lot of different trust models out there. There's transitive trust, how I trust things going between components. There's the bidirectional trust that you kind of touched on, and there's also, I guess, how do I trust the same device for different services?
Mm-hmm.
He's servicing my dog, he's servicing my kidney, whatever, you know. So how do you guys approach that, or how do you personally maybe approach that to define, you have a process you go through to define your trust models, or?
Yes, well, as a number of other speakers already said, doing risk analysis up front makes sense. So what's important? I'm going to just be selfish and prioritize my liver over the dog's food. That's just me. Maybe they're the same thing at some point, but not yet. As far as things like transitive trust and the models that are derived there, those tend to, well, if I can offer a better analog than saying, you know, a meter is just like a computer and that the AMI system is just like a corporate LAN, it'd probably be, maybe a better analogy would be wireless sensor networks that are used by the military. So if you think about the way that works is they dump a whole bunch of stupid, expendable devices out the back of a C-130 on a battlefield scene. And these cheap, expendable devices can sense only a very few things, but they need to be able to transmit that data back to somebody who's trying to figure out, without putting human beings at risk, what's happening. And so there have been a lot of study, a lot of work involved in how do you do things like key management. Now, if you think about an ad hoc network, it doesn't get more ad hoc than throw them out of the back of a plane, right? So you have no control over how those things are deployed. Which means that, okay, so this device needs to talk to that device so they can actually get the data back to some central gathering point. So how do you do that? You can do a lengthy key exchange, but remember, these are cheap, expendable devices. So you can't spend a lot of computational power on that. Now, you might argue that it's probably worthwhile to do so, and it may be for such things. But then the other part of it is, okay, so if an enemy who has a really high desire to make sure that that data is false or doesn't get through at all, if I capture some of these devices and I decide I'm going to transmit incorrect data, or if I can do key extraction out of those things, that would be really very interesting thing for me to do. So having something like a single root of trust for all these devices, maybe. Having symmetric keys, which is one of the methods that they do, doing a random key distribution, so that, say, all the devices have 10 keys, for example. The odds that you capture a device that has enough keys to be able to talk to all the devices is relatively small, depending on how you do things, but that there's some common key between that and at least one neighboring node. So there are all kinds of interesting research papers that have been written along that topic, and for generically how to think about it, that tends to be more the mode that I use. I'm not sure if that.
Going back to the research, then, I guess.
Going back to the research.
And adapting it to your context and applying the risk on top of that.
Well, yes. So starting with a risk analysis. So what am I trying to protect? That's obviously the basic thing. Who's trying to get it? So that's the threat analysis part of things. And then, because I'm essentially a really lazy guy, and because, as was mentioned, crypto is probably best left to cryptographers, and I'm not one of those. I'm an embedded systems guy. So rather than invent some shiny new wheel that I'm terribly proud of, but is really quite horrid from a security point of view, I'd rather use the efforts of very, very many smart people who are actually doing that stuff and apply what's appropriate to my space. And so if there are any key words in there, it's that it's known good stuff, that it's appropriate technology.
Just, I have one comment regarding benefits of the AMI system. Based on our experience, I see that our members, because I came from co-op, they have some other benefits of using AMI. One of them is outage management system. by integrating AMI with outage management system, it's clearly visible to our members that with some spread outages, we're able to restore power faster. And we don't have to call people in the middle of the night to check, do you have a power?
Right.
The answer is,
Yeah.
whether the power is or not, they are not happy. Yet another benefit is to monitor the usage. One of the very common problems with the electric utility is the high usage. The pump, maybe not heat pump, but the water pump may run forever because the stupid relay failed.
Mhm.
At the end of the month, you have a problem. You have a high bill, and you have to fix this pump. With the AMI system, with collecting the hourly data, you can see this problem next day. You can save some significant money. You don't need to watch this power usage every day, but you can set some alerts so you get message on your cell phone that the usage was high. Actually, we did it with the open source software, which is built in-house. It's not very difficult. Yet another very common problem with the utility is that the consumer report the outage, and we are sending crew in the middle of the night, middle of the weekend, middle of the whatever. And no, there is no power outage. The problem is the breaker inside the house. Someone needs to absorb this cost. Depends on the utility. Some utilities charge the consumer, some absorb inside. With AMI, you can, what we call it, ping the meter, or check the meter, check the power of the meter, and avoid those costs. So those are just few other benefits. I think they are visible to our customers, our members, without any time of use, real-time pricing, which people are very afraid of. Actually, people are, I think that some of the problems with this electromagnetic problems are coming from the fear from people that they're afraid of real-time pricing because the energy will be high. So they fight to smart grids, to AMI, to avoid those higher bills, higher costs, real-time pricing. So I think sometimes it might be PR problem with the AMI, the expectation.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a public relations aspect to how that's communicated. I think it varies, obviously. Some utilities, it sounds like yours, do a pretty good job of clearly articulating to their customers in a way that their customers understand that this is a benefit to you, and here's why it's a benefit to you. I think that, well, in one case, for example, I guess he's in the next room, but I know of a utility that has actually sold. They present the remote connect disconnect, the service connect switch. They use that also as a customer service enhancement, and the rationale is, I mean, because often what happens is people say, oh, well, you just want to install those things, you cut people off instantly as soon as they don't pay. Well, first, there are usually prohibitions against doing that in the first place. But the other thing is that what this company has decided to do is to frame that instead as a customer service enhancement. So they might do things like saying, we know you're having some difficulty, we understand that you're having some difficulty paying your bill, but what we can do is if you can come down to the office, or if you have a credit card that you can read over the phone right now, then we can actually turn your power on immediately. And that's a customer service benefit to the actual customer.
Just one more comment. Yes, those are nice features, the prepaid meters or self-disconnect, but unfortunately in our case we are so heavily regulated that we are not allowed to do this.
You're probably the only utility that I've heard of that's too heavily regulated.
We are one of the 5 co-ops probably who are regulated.
Huh, interesting.
To your fourth point about risk, or trust is not about being binary. When you mentioned that, I was curious if you've had to deal with C-level executives that come to you and say, okay, you've got a trust model, or they're dealing with risk in the utility, and they want to quantify that for a dashboard. In other words, are we at DEFCON 5 or 3? Is the threat level high or low? And they want to see that, every morning when they come to the office in this dashboard of, a number of things. Have you had to deal with that out of curiosity?
Yeah, actually, those are the good ones. And I say that because often what it tends to devolve into, if we understand what the rationale is, and it has a real purpose, like what you just mentioned. So, I come in the morning, are we okay? I need to know before my boss comes in and asks me what the heck's going on, right? So for that kind of purpose, it makes a lot of sense. But the way generically for that kind of a thing, and also a number of other related requests. So for example, every device must have a certificate issued to it. And then, well, that may indeed be a valid requirement, but as just my engineering head says, well, why do you want that? What are you trying to accomplish from a security point of view, from a business point of view, that leads you to say that? And if I understand more of why it is you want that, I can better make sure that what I provide matches it. Because if I say, yeah, it's got a certificate in it, oh, by the way, it's in ROM, and it's never referenced by any of the code. Is that still okay? Probably not, right? That clearly doesn't meet the intent of why it was I was asked to put that in the first place. So to the degree that we, and I say we generically as vendors generically, I'm sure these guys will also agree, that to the degree that we understand why it is that we're being asked for specific things, that's good. Even better would be to phrase things as you've done, which is to say, here's the result I want. And then we can collaboratively work together and try to figure out how to best bring that benefit about. That also tends to be the approach that at least I would advise for how RFPs are done. The checklists are good. I think it was mentioned a couple times in that if do you use encryption? No. Okay. Not such a good answer, right? But above and beyond that, what you would really want to know is, does it meet my utility's goals? And what those goals are from a security point of view are often difficult to articulate. And so, and they require, it's not just the proposal writer sitting there banging something out, the same boilerplate list every time. They're from Duke, for example, they actually have people assigned, their security guys assigned to that part of the RFP. So they have a team of people composing the questions who actually understand what the questions mean. That's important. Furthermore, they have people at the back end, when they get the responses back from the vendors, they have people reading the answers who know what the answers mean, and that's also a good thing. So when it comes to sort of a more two-way dialogue, things typically work better, and not just with regard to security, but the whole purchasing decision. Does that answer your question?
Questions? Yeah.
Sure.